Welcome to a special series of the C-Suite podcast, where we're going to be speaking to the individuals behind some of the biggest events and conferences in the world, whether that's in retail, payments, technology, or fintech. Now, we've taken the C-Suite podcast to events in Bangkok, in Dubai, Amsterdam, Las Vegas, and many more, but we've never been to Singapore for the Singapore Fintech Festival. So I'm very pleased to say that I've been joined by Pat Patel, who is the co-CEO of GFTN Forum's Global Finance and Technology Network. And they organise the Singapore Fintech Festival. So Pat Patel, how are you today?
Very good, very good. And thanks for having me on your show.
No, not at all. So, as I said, just keen to get some insight from people behind these events around the world and find out what makes them tick, as it were. So let's start there. What do you think is unique about the Singapore FinTech Festival? What's your kind of special ingredient, if you like?
I was going to say, how long have you got?
Yeah.
It's something that has developed now. The festival has developed for 10 years. The real difference here is the genesis of the festival came from the Monetary Authority of Singapore. So essentially the regulator, the Bank of England, as it were. And so that is, for a start, very unique. The second piece is we're able to bring the leading policy minds, the leading tech minds, and then those in financial services all coming together. And we do this at scale. So you have 70,000 crazy fintech folks all coming into Singapore. And so what that really means is you're able to have a dialogue that can advance the industry. So having worked in multiple other programs before, Money 2020, during the early years as it was growing, bringing finance and tech together can only get you so far. When you bring the regulators in, you start to have a conversation and a dialogue that has outcomes. And so a lot of the work we do is outcome focused. So whether it's on the big stages or behind closed doors, or even our Insights Forum. So we run a 2-day kind of program just before the festival for 5,000 people. We cap it at 5K. We put them all in different roundtables, workshops, design thinking sessions to really start to solve some of or at least frame some of the challenges or frame some of the opportunities. And then we take those and push them out into reports, but also dialogues that then flow through a calendar year. So that's kind of a quick snapshot.
No, absolutely. So, let's look at this year's event. As you said, it's only just happened. So I'd be keen to know what were some of the highlights. And that's really interesting what you say about being very outcome focused. Were there any clear outcomes from this year's festival?
Yeah, so we brought a number of senior leaders together. So the architect behind the India stack, a guy called Nandan Nilekani, the former kind of general manager, kind of the head honcho at the Bank for International Settlements, as well as a number of other regulators and digital asset players to talk about a set of principles for digital money. So if you think there are multiple kind of pathways emerging, you've got the stables crowd, you've got CBDCs, you've then got traditional rails, and how do you start to kind of navigate these when you could have multiple kind of scenarios play out? So what we wanted to do was set some principles. And what we want to do then is we've got about 12 different principles from some of the smartest minds in the industry. We're going to use that to kind of push that out at the beginning of next year and then start a series of kind of working groups to start to put that into practice so the industry can get behind it, but not just the industry, but it could shape the way policymakers are viewing digital money. So that's one good example. The other one is if you think the world's gone through, I think it's like 3 billion unbanked about 20 years ago, and we're now at about 1.3 billion. How do we solve that next billion? And so we brought, again, some smart folks from different parts of the world coming together to kind of say, right, what are the things that the world needs to do over the next 1 to 3 years? One of the key kind of pieces that came out of this was around digital public infrastructure. Another one was around financial health. And so we're starting a series of working groups with the public sector to try and really say, right, what more can we do to reach that last or that next billion? One thing for sure is that next billion is going to be really tough to reach.
Okay. And I guess all of these talking points and those outcomes, they inform the agenda for the festival then, do they? And the kind of speakers that you're looking to attract, because I guess that's a very challenging part of the role as well. Is that right?
So we have about 1,000 speakers across the week, which is absolutely insane.
Yeah.
And so, we have a very talented team that makes sure we do the right briefings and prep. So for us, it's not that you rock up and you go on stage. There is a series of prep calls, there is briefing notes, there's all of these things. So then when you go on stage, you're there to bring your A game. And so from our perspective, it's trying to work through what is it that we want to take into 2026? What does the audience need to hear? How will it shape the industry? And so we will take the insights from the festival and then roll that round to the program we run in Tokyo with the Japanese government. We take it to Rwanda, we take it to India, to China, then to Switzerland, the UK. So we'll be kind of round across pretty much most geographies around the world, picking up those insights. And in the same way that this year's festival was the fruits of a whole year's worth of work in different jurisdictions, picking out the key threads and then bringing those communities all to the festival so you can have that big end of year kind of framing of the year that was and the year that will be next year.
Well, yeah, let's pick up on that kind of framing of the year, if you like, because you're in a unique position, really, to test the pulse of the fintech world, if you like, and to assess the
Yeah.
mood in the community. How would you assess that mood currently?
Clearly, it's been a tough few years, I think, since the heights of 2021, where there seemed to be a lot of capital flowing. I think it was the biggest year on record for fintech funding. Then we had these multiple winters. But I think we're beginning to see greater opportunities. So this year, you've seen a number of IPOs, quite a few of them in the US. There was Pine Labs that came out with their IPO, which is for Pine Labs from India. But we're beginning to see now founders have an exit path.
Hmm.
It's not just about being acquired, but the IPO is now an IPO is a realistic possibility now. And so we're seeing a wave of this, and next year we'll see a wave of it across Asia as well. So I think it's adding a bit more renewed vigor back into the industry.
Hmm.
I think capital is always a challenge, but the good fintechs are being funded. So I think there is an energy that's coming back. But I would say one of the biggest things that we're seeing is that combination of three technologies coming together, and
Hmm.
that is elements of AI, that is tokenization, and then the early onset of quantum. And I think these three technologies will fuel the next decade. And so we're seeing a lot of excitement in those spaces, and pretty much similar to how the first wave of fintech was dominated by mobile, social, cloud, and APIs. This next tech stack of AI, tokenization, and quantum will fuel this next 10, 15 years. So it's, for me, it's an exciting time.
And given all that, what would your advice be to the next wave of fintech founders? What should they be doing? You mentioned solving real world problems like, the number of billions of people unbanked around the world. What other focuses do you think they should be having?
Yeah, yeah, no, it's a really good question. I think we've seen the sea change from growth at all costs to driving profitability.
Hmm.
I think fintech founders of maybe a decade ago were a little bit were focused in different areas, and
Hmm.
growth was always the big piece here. Whereas I see the profitability piece is a higher weightage than growth at all costs. So
Hmm.
that's kind of one thing to note. I think the second piece here is the tech side of things. So really experimenting with what you can build on top of AI models, or if you're in the tokenization space, really thinking through, right, how do I get across that financial services value chain? How do I start to solve some of those problems there? And then, as you mentioned, financial inclusion is, it's a hot topic, certainly. And I would say it's not just the global south, because you think about it, the north, as it were, and I hate these terms, but you think
Hmm.
about the global, yes, there is a higher level of bank penetration, but there is a large percentage of those that are banked that have financial products that they can't use,
Hmm.
whether they're not fit for purpose or the debt levels are so high that you can't use that product. So there is a big challenge both in the north and the south, and there is a lot of work to do, and we need smart founders to try and solve some of these challenges.
Yeah. Now, you spoke to me about the challenges of putting on the event in terms of getting all those thousand speakers together, putting the agenda together. What about when you're right in the midst of the festival and all the craziness is going on? What are the personal stresses for you and the challenges that exist?
So sadly, I'm an old timer now of these things, so I rarely get stressed. The tricky part here is when you add the policy piece to the equation, you have government ministers, you have deputy prime ministers, all of these folks. That's the tricky part because there is protocols, there is certain ways that you have to deal with the public sector. So when you add that to the mix, that tends to be the piece where you kind of have to get it right because these are super, super important people and have a certain way that they like to be, the experience that they want to have. So that's kind of one bit, I think. I think I don't know. It's kind of like a military operation. You know, if you think 1,000 speakers, 70,000 people across the week. But we have an amazing team.
Mhm.
So from my perspective, I think it's about how do I how do I navigate the day from like 6 in the morning till about midnight because there are multiple networking programs that I kind of have to go to and kind of either do a small speech or catch up with certain key partners and stuff. So basically, it's that endurance test of being up at 6, getting home at 12, and then doing it again the next day. So yeah, after a while, you kind of you do it, and then as soon as you hit the weekend, you crash and burn.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, you've already mentioned that the planning has already started for 2026 and these reports that you're putting out, and I guess the planning for next year's event. What does the future hold for SFF? Is there one particular guest speaker maybe that you've always wanted to attract that you would like to get, if not next year, then in the coming years?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I've not been asked that for a while, actually. So not really. Everyone would say, yeah, you want to get Elon Musk or you want to get
Yeah.
these big names, but I think from our perspective, I think it's the people that are actually creating the change, that are actually doing it for the right reasons. And from my, the way I see things, bringing in the right type of dialogue. And that is, having a stage where you have the right regulators together with the technologists and, there's some of those financial services folks and getting that blend right. So it's not about just the big names. It's about, right, what change happens as a result of it. Otherwise, it becomes more of a fanfare of like a famous name comes along, does a waving, says a few words that are tweetable, and then you're off to the next gig. But that's not what the festival is about. Yeah, so we're a little bit different. And as I said, we're cut from a different cloth. So no real big names that spring to mind because I think we tend to attract most of them. Yeah,
Yeah.
so all good there.
Okay, well, final question then. How do you expect the dial to be moved on in the next 12 months then before the next Singapore Fintech Festival? Do you expect similar kind of talking points, or do you think we're going to see a complete revamp of what's exciting the industry?
No, I think it will be the advancement of that three tech stack, those three technologies. As we're moving into production, I think certainly on kind of tokenized deposits, you'll start to see more experiments there. So we hope to have more live use cases there. The same with the commercialization of agentic AI and generative AI. Where are some of the practical kind of commercial propositions? And then from quantum, everyone was talking about encryption and things, but I think we'll have some live use cases, and GFTM will make a big announcement early next year on around quantum. So I think we'll be that next kind of stage down from there, and then hopefully, it was saying there was about 1.3 billion, not that I've counted, unbanked. Hopefully we'll be sub 1 billion, because there'll be some interesting propositions that are catering to that hard to serve segment. So that's kind of the bits that we're thinking on, and also trying to ensure that we're kind of bringing people on the journey. So it's not
Mm,
just those in the industry. You've got kind of students that we really try and bring to the table, and they should be part of the dialogue because it's pretty tough times to be a
mm.
post grad in in a world that's struggling for growth.
Well, listen, thank you so much for joining me here today. It's been very interesting watching the festival from afar, if you like, through my LinkedIn feed. But I hope maybe next year that we can bring the C-Suite podcast to the Singapore Fintech Festival. So, Pat Patel, make it happen. You heard it from Pat Patel. Pat, thanks so much for joining me, and good luck with the planning for next year.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Graham.